Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Harugumo and the Kitakaze because these ships are very, very similar. And a lot of people like the Kitakaze over the Harugumo, and I can't really blame them. Although I don't really play these ships all that often. They've been relegated to my Research Bureau farming line. It allows me to get through a bunch of research points very quickly for very low free XP cost. If you have a lot of free XP, Harugumo line is the absolute cheapest to free XP the entire line, and that allows you to just farm research points rather quickly. I was doing this to get those legendary upgrades for the Colombo and the Vermont. Typically, I play these ships in co-op, but as I was streaming, I figured, hey, I'll play them in random battles. So these games happened back to back, and they're kind of insane. I actually think these ships are incredibly powerful. If you're looking for some insane DPM on the main guns, or at least the fire rate, and you're not having the coal to get something like a Sherman, for example, this is a pretty good line to go for. Unfortunately, you're not getting a very consistent experience through the line. At tier 8, you start to get this really nice gun power, but the earlier ones, not so much. But these later ones are quite fun. There's plenty of reasons I think the Kitakaze at its tier is better than the Harugumo, but first I gotta show you a mistake I'm making here. I'm pushing in front of an island between a radar cruiser and an island, actually, which is pretty bad. You should not be doing this. Fortunately, Harugumo DPM is so good, we can just finish off this Alaska. One of the special experiences here with this line, or at least the higher tiers in this line, the 100mm guns actually have 30mm of pen. That's what typically light cruiser guns have at these higher tiers, and it allows you to full pen other cruisers. If you take IFHE, you're actually going to full pen battleships, over 32mm of pen. But I'm not actually taking that here, since I find battleships easy enough to farm already. Their superstructures are pretty large. Also, the extra fire chance, very nice against those battleships. You can farm a lot of damage that way. Here we're going to see an excellent example of how overpowered plane spotting is. Our carrier comes in and gives us perfect spotting of this Ostrich. This poor guy is going to die here, where otherwise he was making a good play. He was applying a lot of pressure to a low health Harugumo, and I was forced to smoke. I would not have had spotting otherwise, and not a huge fan of that, but this is not a carrier video. This is a Harugumo video. It is a very decent torpedo threat as well, even though it wouldn't seem that way when you look at the torpedo DPM. It's actually pretty bad. But these torps, you get a launcher that launches 6 torps at a time, and you get a torpedo reload booster, allowing you to sometimes launch 12 torps. That's pretty good, especially when you get a lot of battleships pushing through a gap, for example. It's nice because it lets you have this really massive alpha damage when you want it. It's not giving you a lot of DPM, but you're typically not finding yourself in a lot of scenarios in a game where you're wanting that maximum DPM alpha damage salvo. There's only a few opportunities per game for that, and Harugumo and the Kitakaze can both take advantage of that. And that's one of the main reasons I think the Kitakaze, and a lot of people, I believe Kitakaze, to be a stronger ship at its tier. It has the same torpedo power. So you're a tier lower and you still retain this amazing torpedo threat. Really, all you're missing on the Kitakaze is one gun turret. You get 4 turrets instead of 5. And in an arms race game, well, the DPM gets a little bit ridiculous. We got like, what, a 1.7 second reload, something ridiculous like that. We can even blind fire and trace where this Bourgogne is going a little bit. Kind of insane. But overall, I think Kitakaze has a much nicer skill set because the Harugumo actually gives up a lot of maneuverability. It's a much larger ship, so it's going to take more damage, and sure, you get a lot more HP because of that. Again, arms race, you don't actually get 34,000 HP with it. You get more than the Kitakaze, but you're much larger and you have much worse maneuverability, slightly slower too. So Kitakaze feels much more like a standard destroyer in terms of its maneuverability, while retaining this amazing DPM on these guns and torpedoes. So given that Kitakaze is like the 3rd best HE DPM at its tier, Harugumo is like 4th best at its tier, it is better DPM, don't get me wrong. but Kitakaze retains most of what makes Harugumo good at a tier lower, and doesn't have the unfortunate downside of this larger, less maneuverable hull. And since we're farming out of this smoke, well, you gotta worry about torpedoes a lot in the Harugumo, much more so than the Kitakaze, thanks to that maneuverability difference. So I do believe that Kitakaze is a little bit better at its tier. Unfortunately, this game, we've lost a lot of our teammates. We do have a few more buffs, so maybe we can come back with that. But we're going to farm a ton of damage off of these battleships, and this is really why I'm not as interested in taking IFHE. We'll take a look at the builds at the end, of course, but given how easy it is to hit superstructures on these battleships, I really don't find that super necessary anymore. Back in the day when this line first released, or we only had the Akizuki at tier 8, it really did need the IFHE to pen anything at all. These guns did not have any improved HE pen, so without IFHE, I don't think you really penned anything. Even destroyers you would be shattering on, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, I'm not quite remembering that correctly at this time. But it was an AP ship mostly. You were mostly spamming AP out of this ship, and it had a lot of DPM, but the downside was not being able to use the HE. And Wargaming over time has buffed it quite a bit, so now the HE is what you shoot, and it's very, very powerful. Main here going to take a decent amount of damage if we can land some of these fires. Takes a few torpedo hits as well. And you'll notice that I'm running a bit of a range on this ship, 13 kilometers, and it's a little bit difficult to hit this ship. Get over like 15 kilometers with the range upgrades on the commander build. But you don't have to run it that way. I think for random battles, it is very nice, especially at tier 10 here with Harugumo. We're not as interested in pushing. We also have worse concealment than Kitakaze. Kind of forgot to mention that, but it is something to note that this ship can do a little bit more with its range, I think. Where Kitakaze, thanks to that extra concealment as well as maneuverability, I don't always find myself wanting to take range, since we can play a little bit better at closer ranges, stealth builds, and going after destroyers. At close range, Harugumo, being so clumsy, does take a lot more damage, even if it does dish out quite a bit of pain. Already up to, what, 160k damage here, farming the Malta here a little bit, but I think we're about to lose our carrier, so we're going to be last left alive. Solo warrior opportunity, perhaps? Yeah, I don't think so. But we're still going to get a decent amount of damage. The Mecklenburg here going to push in, and he's actually going to shoot. So typically you have to worry about spotting. That's always the problem when you're playing a ship like this and maybe you're alone on a flank. You don't have spotting that allows you to farm like this from behind an island or in your smoke. So it can be a little awkward to play at times if you don't have that extra spotting. Fortunately here, the Mecklenburg is blind firing us. I mean, this game is over, so it makes sense. But it is going to allow us to farm quite a bit of extra damage. There's a high caliber, 220k damage now at this point, and I mean, battleship superstructures, man. I am moving in my smoke though, so even though we are very easy to blind fire thanks to the never-ending rain of shells, I have to move around because it is possible for them to get some decent damage in, and the carrier is doing a good job here of blind dropping the torpedoes. I'm not a fan of carriers, as you know, but this is something you got to worry about for now as far as this game goes. I really wish they would remove them, but it is something you got to worry about. And Harugumo does do significantly worse against carriers, thanks to that worse maneuverability, and well, just being a bigger ship overall too. But that's a 260,000 damage game. Arms race, kind of inflating things a little bit there, certainly. But Harugumo is no joke when it comes to its gun power. We're looking at the coal destroyers, of course, right now, and we're going to get into some of the massive DPM gunboats soon. So it's nice to see Harugumo, some of the tech tree ships as well, offering a very powerful gunboat option. Moving on to the Kitakaze, and yeah, we get better matchmaker too. Not always. Tier 9, of course. Very liable to get up-tiered into the super ship games these days. But every once in a while, you do get that top-tier experience where you're fighting tier 7s. And Kitakaze into tier 7s is kind of ridiculous. We do fight an enemy Akizuki here, and that ship does get quite a bit worse torpedoes, I'd say, compared to the Kitakaze. You get the same number of guns, but you don't have access to that all-powerful 6th upgrade slot, giving us an amazing reload here. Even though the HE alpha damage isn't great, we're still able to do some chip damage in here. Akazuki gets a little bit stuck on this island. We'll do a little bit of blind firing on him. But I really like Kitakaze for flanks like this, where I'm the destroyer on this flank, and I do have to do a lot of the scouting for my team. And it's just so much more comfortable to play a ship that has reasonable maneuverability. It's not even that impressive, but compared to Harugumo, it is much, much nicer. And I think you're going to notice that, especially if you're grinding this line to get Harugumo. It's a pretty significant drop in the maneuverability once you go up to the Harugumo here. Farming the knives out here a little bit could be a decent option, but we have to worry about torpedoes still. You notice I'm looking to get greedy for those torps, but with the Benson coming over, as well as the Akazuki, there's probably torps on the way for us, so I decide to leave my smoke. Things like this, you do have to be willing to do in this line. Anytime you don't have a hydro, or you know there's torps coming for your smoke, you just have to be willing to give up your smoke. Maybe even play behind it, right, like we're doing here. We're at full speed. Anytime torps are potentially coming, we do at least have an option to maneuver here and dodge them. And there they are, right? They come through our smoke. If I had greeted for those torpedoes, the torp angles are not that amazing. The gun angles are, you know, looked at, what, Z44 yesterday, I believe. Yeah, gun angles and torp angles were terrible on that thing. Kitakaze has very good gun angles. Not the best torp angles, but that's fine. It's not a torpedo ship. Benson caught bow in. Oof, that's going to be a little bit rough. Although, I am going to miss quite a few shells here. And this is something I do probably too much in gunboat destroyers, is I use this free cam. If you push mouse 2, your right click, you actually zoom out into the normal camera while still retaining that locked on accuracy, that aimed accuracy, and it will track the target. So it's a nice way to get a more bird's eye view, or just to see your surroundings better. And I like this a lot for destroyers. Anytime I'm shooting like this, right now for example, I can see where that Knazna is going, I can see what's going on around my ship, and maybe dodge incoming fire a little bit easier than if I was in the scoped view. But it does result in less accurate salvos, so we missed out on that Benson kill. Our teammates got it, it's not a big deal, but something to point out. It's a very useful thing to have, but maybe I do it a little bit too much. This Richelieu, though, stuck bow in. This is an opportunity where I think IFHE would have been pretty good, although we are going to get some fires on this guy, fortunately. But yeah, those French battleships, 32 millimeters of armor everywhere. IFHE is pretty nasty against them. But we're also going to see the power of the fire chance. We shoot so many shells that even with not the best fire chance, well, there's a double fire. And I believe I actually get a triple fire just like that. So, you know, don't count out the fire chance either. It's a very, very powerful ship. Here now we have a Kagero on our flank, so it makes it even better. This is always what I'm talking about when I'm playing these gunboat DDs. Harugumo massively benefits from this, where you're that second line, that muscle, the backup for your spotting destroyer. Kitakaze does a great job as well, because it's very powerful in the gun department too. But it can play that solo flank role a little bit easier. Also, this free look option does lock your guns over islands, so you can still shoot over islands even when the ship isn't targeted, as long as you've used your free look before they go dark. Kind of a funny little feature there, but not always the most useful. There, though, it did get us a cheeky little fire. The Seyang is coming over, as well as a Helena, so I'm a little worried about that, especially the Helena. We've got some very, very powerful guns on it. Don't really want to be fighting that guy alone, so gonna get ready to leave our smoke. And yeah, 7.5 kilometers, not really where we want to be against that guy. So we're gonna kite away and launch our torpedo salvo. This is the idea, right? I haven't really been using my torps. I haven't really been using the torpedo reload booster. This is a perfect opportunity. Gneisenau, as well as that Helena, could get caught in these torpedoes, and they do massive, massive damage. And again, just going to kite away for now. Really not much point in using our guns for now. We get, I think, the one, and then maybe our second spread will finish him off. Very nice to be able to launch 12 instead of just 6. This reload booster is very, very powerful. Long reloads, of course, but it means that you do have that torpedo power when you need it, when the opportunity arises. Helena, though, just going to full pen him everywhere. This is the other reason that not taking IFHE anymore makes a little more sense to me, because the cruisers are a problem to deal with for a lot of destroyers. But with this ship, you still have the pen to deal with these light cruisers without any issues at all. Of course, you do have to worry about their incoming damage, but at least your guns do full pen everywhere on most of the light cruisers. So even some of the heavy cruisers only have 30 millimeters of armor at these tiers, so you still full pen them. And then battleships have big superstructures, take a lot of fire damage. That's kind of the rationale I have behind IFHE, but I don't think you're wrong for taking it. It's a preference thing, I think. Already up to 133,000 damage in this one, and I think even though we have less damage here, we've shown that Kitakaze can do a little bit more of the team play aspect of the game. We didn't necessarily have the opportunity as much in that arms race game, I suppose, but I just really value that extra concealment, maneuverability. It's really, really nice. Although Harugumo is very fun to play too, especially if you're looking for just the max DPM, the maximum amount of shells fired. That's very fun as well. So that's it for the 2 games, 143 here, and we missed all the torps on that Caracello. I was expecting him to turn out or turn in, and he just went in a straight line. Got my head a little bit too much there. And a Confederate in this one, 16 fires as well. Tiger 59 top score. When do you see that? Well done. And not a Witherer even on all of those fires. As for the builds here, we can really mix and match quite a bit with these two. On the Kitakaze, I'm running more of this conceal build, not running the full range here with main battery and AI expert. Instead, electing to take demo expert as well as superintendent. It allows you to get more of smokes, which is very valuable on these ships. It's really your lifeline. There's no special gimmicks here with saturation or a heal to keep you alive, so taking superintendent can be very, very valuable. So here we get 6.1 on the Kitakaze, which is quite nice, and then we have an alright amount of HP. As for the equipment here, we do get, I mean, a pretty standard build, honestly. There's really not much to say here. You get a lot of options for torpedoes. Personally, I do find that the upgraded 12-kilometer torps here are going to be the best ones. The F3s are funny, but I mean, 8 kilometers is pretty close range. So you know how I like having torps that at least extend beyond radar ranges. And again, not even going for them here on the Harugumo. Very similar setups though, both overall, and we do get this more range-focused build here. Main battery and AI expert instead of superintendent. A little harder to play, but it does give you a little bit more of a comfortable range upgrade, allowing you to play in those passive tier 10 and super ship games a little bit easier with a ship that is less maneuverable. Pretty good HP pool here. Even 0.1 detect worse here does feel pretty significant. It doesn't sound like it, but it really comes down to this maneuverability. We're a little bit slower, turning radius is worse, rudder shift time is worse. So it adds up, as well as just the ship physically being much larger, right? If we look at them here, it's pretty big. It's a pretty big difference here with the Harugumo. It extends quite far back here, so you are going to take quite a bit more damage in this ship. So having that option to farm from longer range a little bit easier is nice, but it works on both of them. Either one can run more of a range build or focus more on the close range engagements. It's a good line though, especially at the end. I'm not a huge fan of how it shifts from being this kind of awkward torpedo line here at tier 5 to tier 7, but Akazuki, Kitakaze, Harugumo are fun, and yeah, you can see it's the reset line for me. You can even stack them just really quick, right? So if I was to reset right now, this would go to X5, so you don't need to play them every single time. You just have to get all the way to the end with research point, with free XP, and then you can reset again, and it will just keep stacking on top of itself. And then you just have to play one game and win or earn 300 base XP. So just play a co-op game. That's going to be the fastest way to just output all of that research points. If you're wondering, that is how most of these people get so many research points so quickly without really playing the ships all that often or grinding through them. It's all about the free XP allowing you to do that. And the Harugumo line is the cheapest one to free XP all the way to the tier 10. That's why we use this one. Well, that's going to do it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you like Kitakaze or Harugumo more? Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.